my mom and they strike up a conversation. And I don't know why people do this to small children, but if you can hear me and you do this, please stop it. Because children, unless they're that bold, will not tell you that they don't like being pet like dogs. Um, but people, I've seen this happen. People have a tendency, oh, they're so cute, and they start like trying to rub on faces and pet hair. Stop that. But this lady, my mother always kept my hair in one ponytail because it was the easiest thing for her to do. She wasn't really a hairdoer like that, but she always made sure my hair was pressed out because I've had curly hair my entire life, and she really couldn't figure out what to do with it. So she would always make sure my hair was pressed perfectly straight, and I wore a ponytail like I had a Rihanna forehead at like 7 because my hair was pulled back so tight. Um, and the lady was, she rubbed her hands across my hair and she was like, oh, her hair is so pretty. And as we all know, I didn't like that even then. So I kind of moved away from her because I don't like being touched by random strangers. And as she pulled her hand away and she's laughing and they're talking, I look at this woman and I go, oh, you're sad because your husband's dying. Just out of nowhere. I don't know what a husband is. I'm 7. I know my mother has one. He is my father. So, like, I understand things as a 7-year old, but I still have a lot of innocence about me at that age. And I tend to blurt things out. And she looks at me and she steps away. So now my mother has that look on her face, like she always gets when something like this happens. And the woman starts crying. And I told her, I said, it's okay. And I'm trying to make her feel better about the fact that I just told her that, her husband is dying, if not already dead, at her house. And she is looking at me so crazy, which as I got older, I got used to being looked at like that. And she starts asking my mom, like, who are we and how did we know her husband was sick? And my mom was like, you know what, she tends to talk a lot. We never pay her any attention. And thank goodness the bus comes and she kind of just rushes me onto the bus, and I'm like, mommy, that woman's husband is dying. And I'm saying it out loud as she's trying to get me to go sit down and shut up. I've had several moments like that in my lifetime. um And like I said, when I was younger, it didn't make any sense to me. I just knew that people would touch me or get too close to me and I would start feeling things. I hated crowds because my emotions could change 20 times within 30 minutes just being in crowds of people. It is not like the coolest place to be for me. And I didn't understand how to guard myself from it. So I just got to a point where, you know what? I'm just, don't touch me. I don't want to be in a crowd. Don't be all up on me. Don't be around me. Like, just don't touch me. Now, as I've gotten older, I've learned how to block a lot of things out. I had to figure a lot of things out on my own because at the time, now there are groups of people and people that you can go to and you can talk to and they understand and they don't think you're insane. Back then, the people that I was around, other than, my youngest sibling, who thank goodness was there to witness a lot of things that was happening so that I wasn't the only one who was seeing them or I wasn't the only one who would hear them or certain things would happen and I would tell her such and such is pregnant or so and so is going to die. That was always my thing. I could always sense death and pregnancy. And whenever they would announce what was going on, she would just look at me because we already knew. That's why I loved having that younger sibling, that connection with my sister, because my brothers didn't pay any attention to half the things I said, but my sister would always really listen to me, and probably because she's younger than I am, but she would always listen to me when I would tell her things like that. And even as we got older, I told my mom her first 3 pregnancies, I called my mother before she called anybody, and I was like, she's pregnant. And I was like, did she tell you? I was like, I haven't talked to her in days. I'm like, but I'm telling you, she's pregnant. And I know it. And sure enough, and my mother has always believed in it because my mother has witnessed it from the time I was little up until my adulthood. And she was like, it's not. I had a minister once tell me that it was not a gift that God had given to me. And that he made me feel as though it was something bad. It was something evil that I needed to not dabble in. And I'm thinking, how was I dabbling at 3 or 4 years old? I've always been this way. And I'm like, instead of telling me that it's evil and dunking me underwater every time I get close to you, I really need somebody to explain to me what is happening to me. Or there are people who think it's not real and it's a joke and, oh, she just says that to make people believe and she says that to be witchy. If I was doing it for that reason, I'd tell it to everybody. Up until this point on this podcast, because at my age, I do not care anymore how you feel about my presence. Up until this point, I wouldn't even tell other people. I tried my best to avoid, I used to work in a hospital. I tried my best to avoid my coworkers ever finding out I messed around and had a slip up. And I had been there a good 7 or 8 years. And I used to work with terminally ill patients from time to time. And one of those patients, because you get used to seeing them all the time, after a while you kind of build a connection. One of those patients, before he left the hospital the last time, and he told me he knew he would never see me again. He wore, and I still have it to this day, he wore a guardian angel pin on his lapel. And before they wheeled him out, he asked him to stop by the front. He needed to talk to me. And I stepped out to talk to him. And I saw him fumbling around with his shirt. And then he grabbed my hand and he sticks something in my hand and he closes my hand. And he's staring at me and he was like, no matter what happens to you, no matter where you go, you always know that I have prayed for it and will always pray for you. You have made this journey a beautiful one for me. And when I tell you, everybody in the hallway, anybody who could hear this man's voice was in tears. I almost cry now just thinking about it. And he was like, I know I won't see you again because this is going to be my last round. I'm not going to make it after this. And he knew this. He was like, but I'm going to be okay because I knew you were here. And people were like, you were really close to him. I was like, I was as close to him as I am to anybody else. I was as close to him as my other co-workers were close to him. But he used to always come in and say, there is something about you that makes me feel all right about my situation, no matter how bad it is. And when he passed away, I knew it. I knew the very moment that he left here, I felt it. And I'm like, nobody understood that. So when it happened with another patient, not only did I feel it, I had an entire dream about it. I had, so strange, I had a dream that I was in the hospital, I was at work, and somebody had called a code black, which, if I remember my codes right now correctly, is like a bomb. And I turned around and I was like, did somebody say code black? And a woman looks at me and says, no, she said code death, not code black. It's code death. And I'm like, there is no such thing as a code death. And she was like, yes, there is. And she points to this weird color. And next to it, it says death. Now, I had worked in a hospital for about 10 years. I had to have a badge with the color codes on the back of it the entire time that I was there. And I am telling you, the color that I saw is not on that badge anywhere. So I'm like, oh, okay. It's a cold death. All right, who died? And she points to a clock and I see the exact time on the clock, and then she points to a room, and I go in the room and I see the patient. And as I see the patient, I yell out his name, which actually wakes me up. So when I go to work the next day, I was like, man, I got to stop doing this. And my coworker was like, what's wrong? I was like, I had this dream last night, and I'm telling her about it. And I was like, and it was a code Des, and I told her the time and everything. And I was like, I'm starting to really take this home with me. I was like, first the first patient, now this. And I sit down and I start getting myself together for the day and seeing what we have going on and looking at the patient's charts and who's coming in, and one of the techs comes out and she just looks real somber, and I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, we lost a patient. And my coworker looks at me, looks at the tech, and says the name, and she was like, yeah, how did you know? Now my coworker is staring at me hardcore, like I can feel her looking at the side of my head. And I was like, oh man. And she was like, she had a dream about it, and it was at this time of day. And I'm like, oh, they're going to think I'm insane. And the technician goes, is that true? And I'm like, yeah, it tends to happen. It's not a big deal. It was probably just my brain's way of trying to prepare me for the fact that he wasn't going to be here. She was like, right down to the exact time. And I'm like, it happens. And I came up with some off the wall reason as to why it happened. That was like in my late 20s, early 30s. I was always kind of trying to explain away things when people would find out. So if I was really doing this for, the wow factor or anything like that, I would be spreading the word all over the place. I'd Miss Cleo the game up and would be accurate. But I always hid it because I didn't like other people knowing that I was seeing things or was having dreams about things or I was feeling things. Like, I didn't want other people to know it, and I tried to keep people away from me so that it would not happen. And me trying to protect my energy turned into who I am now, which I come off as extremely antisocial because I'm always trying to guard my space. Now, I said all of that to get to the point of this. I had a conversation with a young lady, as I stated before, that I met on Facebook. And that conversation with her reminded me that every now and then you have to let at least one person into your space. Of course, like I said, I have my best friend. I will always have my best friend. And that's that on that. But it's okay to let other people into your space as long as you feel comfortable with who they are and you know that they're there to help you and you're there to help them. Like, you have to have other people on your journey with you. Now, you can't take everybody with you, and I'll be the first one to tell you, everybody can't go where you're going. And I don't need you to take a tribe with you as big as the Wu-Tang. I don't believe in that. I never have. But to have 2 or 3 solid individuals in your life that you know that when I bring my story to you, if I bring my secrets to you, if I bring my concerns to you, if I bring my joy to you, that you are going to be that solid, that friend, that person that, you will help me to celebrate the highs and you'll help pull me up when I'm low, and you will trust me with your feelings. And that's a big one right there, because a lot of people don't get that. That is a big thing about friendship. I have to be able to trust you with my feelings. You have to be able to trust me with your feelings. And I like the fact that the handful of people that I'm close to, they know that they could dump all of their everything on me. They are the people I don't block out the emotions. Although my best friend has this thing where when she's in extreme pain,